Welcome back to the Chick-fil-A halftime report. They didn't invent the chicken. They just invented the chicken sandwich. Good ball game, 7-7 at the half. And we're going to send it down on the field where John Leone will talk to Jim Dicker, the Vice President of Development and College Relations. Here's John.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Michael. You know, some guys will do anything for a little FaceTime with the boss. For me, it comes down to this. I'm here with Jim Dicker, my friend and my boss from the College Relations and Development Office. And Jim, lots of changes taking place on College Hill, not the least of which is we're in the process of searching for a new president. And as Dan Weiss leaves College Hill, tell us a little bit about what you think his legacy will be at the college.
Yeah, thanks, John. It certainly has been a wonderful 8 years with Dan Weiss at the leadership of the college. Many things have been accomplished in these 8 years. If you think about when Dan got here, he initiated a strategic plan where we set out to grow the faculty by 20%. And in probably one of the most difficult economic environments we faced, and certainly in our lifetimes, well, mine, I'm younger than you are. You know, we've gotten halfway to accomplishing that goal. We've added significantly to the faculty, and again, at a time when it was difficult to do that. If you look at the campus and the facilities that have been added during Dan's tenure, we're in the process of completely renovating the quad, the heart of the campus, taking the cars off of the quad, which will have an enormous impact on our campus. We have the Oxley Center for Global Studies, the Grossman Hall. So many facilities have been added to the campus. And finally, you know, when I think back about Dan's legacy, you know, many people forget that when he got here, he inherited a situation with athletics that was pretty tough. I mean, we were the only school in the Patriot League not giving scholarships at the time. We had facilities that were, woefully inadequate. We have now probably the most beautiful football stadium, I'd say, in the country for a school our size. And we've renovated many of our athletic facilities, and I think we've solved the scholarship problem at Lafayette.
Yeah, and not the least of which, all those things you mentioned, obviously, Jim, the scholarship issue, and yourself being a former Division I athlete at Lafayette, an outstanding wrestler, by the way. Tell me what you think the impact of scholarships will be on the athletic program.
Yeah, I think there will be two major impacts. One is we will finally have a level playing field. You know, it's been years since we've had a level playing field with the other schools in the Patriot League. And once this program is fully implemented, it'll take about 4 years, but once it's fully implemented, we will have an absolute level playing field. And I think the biggest impact will be on our women's sports. Many of our women's sports have been competing for years against other schools that were fully scholarshiped, and now, because of the impact of Title IX, we will have scholarships in virtually all of our women's sports.
Having answered the athletic scholarship, there still are challenges that remain. Can you delineate maybe some of the other challenges? I mean, scholarship is outstanding. It's certainly a big piece of the puzzle, but it's not a panacea. Are there other challenges that you see Lafayette Athletics facing today?
Yeah, there's no question. There are, I would say, two major challenges that we face today. One is because of our size, you know, we're the smallest school in the Patriot League. We're probably one of the smallest schools in playing FCS football at our level. And that size issue is important financially. We are, we struggle to pay the bills in athletics. There's no question about it. We do an excellent job of raising money, as you and I can attest, because that's what we do.
Well, I do.
In fact, last year our Maroon Club surpassed $1 million in annual fundraising, which is terrific for a school of our size. And annually, we raise several $1 million for athletics to keep the program strong and to keep it where it is. And we have an upcoming capital campaign, as you know, and there will be a large component in the capital campaign for athletics. So the finances are certainly an issue, and an issue that we're dealing with. I'd say second is league stability. You know, when you think about the college, it's important that we play in a league that has schools that are like us, that have the same academic principles, and clearly the Patriot League is the perfect place. And, you know, we've addressed that recently with the addition of Boston University and Loyola of Maryland to bring the league up to 10 full members.
Yeah, Jim, really well said. Relative to that, we all know that you now have a new role as well, as athletics has now been moved over to that department, so I'm sure there's a connection there, and it makes sense in that regard. If you were coaching these days, you're in a kid's home, explain to that young man why he should come to Lafayette.
Well, I think what I would say to a young man in high school thinking about Lafayette, or really any school for that matter, but particularly Lafayette, I would ask them to think about what happens after graduation. I think that's the key thing they have to keep in mind. And if you look at our program, we've got a terrific career services program. Our folks go on to get good jobs and excel in their careers. In fact, last year's class, we measure classes 6 months after graduation, and we had 96% of the class employed or in graduate school 6 months after graduation. So I would ask young folks to think about what happens when the days on the field end.
You know, I often think about the U.S. News and World Report and all of these other measurements that colleges are gauged by, and if I'm a parent, I always would want to know more about what leaves the college than what comes in. And I think Lafayette does a great job preparing our kids for the future.
There's no question about it. And there was a Bloomberg business report that was issued recently that looks at return on investment. So it looks at the amount you spend on college and then the return on investment in terms of jobs. And Lafayette ranked in the top 20 of 1,500 colleges and universities across the country. So I think that's a good validation of that statement.
Tougher question here for you, Jim. If you had to pick out one thing that you think makes Lafayette alumni most proud of their college, what do you think it would be?
I think it would be the success of our alumni. If you think about what Lafayette alumni have done in the world, it's been tremendously impressive. We have had alumni who have won Nobel Prizes. We've had alumni who have been commandants of the Marine Corps, Chief of Staff of the Army. And I think since we're at a football game, it's also important to mention that we invented the huddle at Lafayette and also invented the football helmet. So our alumni have done a lot of wonderful things in the world.
Outstanding. And now, Jim, in your new role, we've talked about the progress that the college has made in the face of a difficult economy. No one would know this better than you, but what are the challenges in raising money for the athletic department specifically? We've had a lot of success. The campaign we're gearing up for, there's an ambitious goal that we've set for that, but for athletics in particular, what are those challenges?
Well, I think the challenge is really getting the message out to donors and making the case and spreading the news about the challenges in athletics and how their funds will be used and really the impact they'll have and how it will benefit our student athletes. So I think it's a communication issue and getting that out there.
You know, it's hard for me to realize that I arrived at Lafayette College in 1980. You arrived at Lafayette College in 1981 as a heavyweight wrestler. Take us back a little bit, Jim. If you've been basically living at the college all those years now. You've been there as a student and then now as an administrator. What are some of the changes? Are the kids that much different?
You know, they really aren't. It's amazing. When I was first came back to work at Lafayette in 1988, there were students on campus who were students when I was a student. And then a couple of years went by and I realized the students on campus weren't born when I was a student on campus. But that's the one thing about working at a college. You know, you actually age. They come in the same age and you get a year older every year. But I think the students have stayed the same. I think their values, I think what they want out of a college experience, I think has stayed the same. And Lafayette's a great place and we continue to provide that.
Well, I see you interact on a consistent basis with the members of our Board of Trustees. It must be difficult at times because you were an RA and some of those guys were on your floor. You had to call the shots.
No question about it. Now they're my boss. So none of those stories.
You know, Jim, it has been a pleasure in the development office, and despite all of the challenges that a college like Lafayette faces, its size, we're committed to who we are. We know who we are. Thanks in large part to Dan's leadership. I mean, we're in the middle of, or beginning a search now for a new president. We've had some feedback from alumni. Give us your, maybe list of what you'd like to see in Dan's successor.
Yeah, sure. So we've had 3 or 4 alumni events now where we've talked to alumni about the qualities and characteristics they'd like to see in the new president. I think what we've heard is we need a president in the future that understands the history of the college, understands the importance of things that have gone on at Lafayette, but also understands marketing and positioning the college in today's world. So I think we need to get a person who really understands sort of where we've been and where we're going and knows how to move us forward.
Well, if I have a vote, hire a fundraiser. It's going to make our job easier. Gary, Michael, you'll see why it's. We've got a pretty good team up in Markle Hall, and it's part of the engine that drives this college. And the man standing to my right is one of those reasons. He's a Lafayette guy through and through, and we were pleased, Jim, to have you spend time with us this halftime.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, John.
Gary, Michael, back to you guys.
All right, and we know who we are. Michael Joseph, Gary Laubach, John Leone. We'll be back right after this timeout.